We begin the news in Europe, where King Charles III delivered the King's Speech at the opening of the UK's Parliament, outlining the laws that the government proposes to make over the coming months, including on immigration, housing, and future oil and gas field licenses. The ceremonial address is not written by the monarch, but by the government, and is delivered expressionless, in keeping with the convention that the monarch is above politics. Now, the speech outlines the policies on which Conservative Prime Minister Rishi Sunak plans to fight in next year's general election.
Will be introduced to strengthen the United Kingdom's energy security and reduce reliance on volatile international energy markets and hostile foreign regimes. This bill will support the future licensing of new oil and gas fields, helping the country to transition to net zero by 2050 without adding undue burdens on households. My ministers will bring forward a bill to reform the housing market by making it cheaper and easier for leaseholders to purchase their freehold and tackling the exploitation of millions of homeowners through punitive service charges. Renters will benefit from stronger security of tenure and better value, while landlords will benefit from reforms to provide certainty that they can regain their properties when needed.
I'm now joined by Tetteh Kofi, a journalist and media commentator. Thank you so much for your time, Kofi.
It's my pleasure, Dapo.
All right, great. Now, King Charles III gave a speech today highlighting the UK's government's focus on the country. Now, seeing that the speech is largely ceremonial, what is the significance of the monarchy in the UK's current modern political landscape?
Well, the point is that even the system of government, the laws by which government is run, which is the British Constitution, is itself unwritten. It runs via a series of conventions. So it is very well understood within the political establishment that the king is ceremonial, and his principal function is to provide continuity from generation to generation and government to government. Remember, his mother, who was the longest serving monarch ever in the history of the United Kingdom, ruled for 70 years. So that really is a function of the monarchy, is to provide continuity from political government to political government, and they shift between 5 and 10 years, although this one has survived for 13 years so far.
Now, talking about continuity, what are the potential implications of outlining policies in the speech for the upcoming general elections, and how might this affect the Conservative Party's campaign?
Okay. Well, I've just looked at the polls. The Tories are quite far behind Labour. I think they're standing at something like 24%. And Labour is polling on voting intentions 44%. So purely on those numbers, it looks as if the Tories are on a hiding to nothing at the next general election. So what Sunak has to do is to offer enough to give the electorate the impression that this is a man who is still going for change. Although, in parentheses, one would have to ask, well, you know, you've had almost 14 years. If you haven't changed what you wanted to change, when will you do it? But he still has to let people know that he's in play and he's trying to change the future for the better of the country, while not promising too much. Because if I was Keir Starmer, what I would say was, at the next general election, maybe in December of next year, that, look, and this is what the Prime Minister promised, he completely overreached himself, he's a failure, he didn't achieve those things. So it's a balancing game that he's got to play.
Now, talking about balancing game, of course, how does the tradition of the monarch remain politically neutral? I mean, in spite of the impact of public perception and trust in the government's proposed laws?
Well, look, I mean, you have to look at it purely in practical terms. I have known King Charles's mother all of my life. This was a series of firsts and a bit of a shock because I'm used to Queen Elizabeth II opening Parliament. I have done all my life. For the first time now, it's King Charles and his consort, Queen Camilla. So the importance of this is that it does provide a flow and a continuity which most other countries would probably try to have. They just can't achieve it. And that's the role that King Charles now is playing. And even though this is his first King's speech, it's going to go on into another innings, and the royal crown will maintain its posture.
Now, talking about the royal crown, I remember when during the inaugural ceremony of King Charles, there were, I mean, as much as people are out there celebrating, there were certain groups who questioned the relevance of the monarchical system in, modern politics. What's your take on this?
Well, again, you've got to be very careful because anybody who attacks the monarchy, in the eyes of a significant proportion of British society, is actually attacking the British state itself. But the point is that increasingly the world is changing. The monarchy may stay stable, but the world around it does not stay stable. For example, people have been talking about the number of diamonds in that crown on the king's head. There are 2,600 diamonds. We don't mine diamonds in England, so those diamonds came from somewhere. And all the ramifications of colonialism, of empire, and so on and so forth, all of these things are being aired now, and people are having the confidence to speak about them. So yes, there is a growing sense of public opinion as to whether or not a system which is inherited and monarchical has any relevance today. And of course, what the monarchy would say is that it's ceremonial. If it's ceremonial, it does have its pluses, and so it should be maintained. I mean, can you imagine the stability that ordinary private citizens would give to the continuity of the British state? And I would argue that one of the greatest strengths for Britain in the international community is stability. They've never had a revolution like the French.
Thank you so much for your time, Kofi.
My pleasure.